I spent 38 years building a wall around my family. Turns out the man who tore it down had a key the whole time, because I gave it to him. Let me tell you something nobody tells you about being a caregiver. It doesn't break you all at once. It doesn't hit you like a truck and leave you flat on the pavement. No, it takes you apart the way water takes apart stone. Slowly, quietly, in ways you don't notice until the day you look in the mirror and you genuinely cannot remember the last time you slept past 5 a.m. Cannot remember the last meal you ate sitting down. Cannot remember the last time someone asked how you were doing and actually waited for the answer. That was me, Anthony Hyde, 77 years old, retired government contractor. 31 years of federal service, clean record, good pension, a 4-bedroom brick colonial on Elmwood Court in Myers Park, Charlotte, North Carolina, that I paid off in 2009 and was proud of every single morning I backed out of that driveway. Myers Park. In case you don't know it, old trees, wide streets, the kind of neighborhood where people still wave at each other and mean it. We moved there in 1991 when the kids were small. Lily picked the house, walked through the front door, looked at the light coming through the back windows, and said, "This is it, Anthony. This is where we raise them." 38 years of marriage. She was right about most things. I learned to stop being surprised by that somewhere around year 12. And for the last 26 months, I had been her full-time caregiver. My wife, Lily. Lily was diagnosed with early onset dementia at 64 years old, and from that day forward my entire world became her medication schedule, her appointments, her good days, and her bad days. That was my life. That was all of it. But here is what I didn't know was also happening during those same 26 months. The man I had been thanking God for every single day, the man I called my son, had been robbing me blind. And I will tell you exactly how he did it. We will get to that. But do us one quick favor. Subscribe. A lot of people watch without ever doing it, but it costs you nothing, and it means everything to us. Hit the like button while you're at it, and drop your thoughts in the comments after listening. You are going to love it here. The neurologist that diagnosed Lily was Dr. Ellison. Quiet man, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. The kind of doctor who has delivered bad news enough times that he has learned to slow down his voice, let the words arrive gently, one at a time so your brain has half a chance of keeping up with your ears. He told us on a Thursday afternoon. I drove home from the Atrium Health Neurology Clinic on Moorhead Street in complete silence. Lily fell asleep in the passenger seat somewhere on Providence Road. Just gone, the way she sometimes did after long appointments. Head tilted toward the window, one hand resting open in her lap like she was waiting for something to be placed in it. I watched her sleep at every red light. I told myself, drive. Just drive. Get her home. Get her inside. Then fall apart. I pulled into the driveway on Elmwood Court, and I sat in that car for 20 minutes. Just sat there. I thought about the retirement account. $340,000. Every dollar of it earmarked. Not for travel, not for a fishing boat, not for any of the things men my age are supposed to spend retirement money on. Every dollar was for Lily, for the memory care facility I had already quietly researched over on Carmel Road in South Charlotte, for the specific deeply private fear I had carried for years without ever saying it out loud to another living soul, that I would die before her and leave her with nothing and no one. At 77, that fear is not abstract. It is the last thought I have every single night before I close my eyes. 3 days after Dr. Ellison's office, my phone rang. My son, Christopher Hyde. Chris, Dad. His voice was warm, steady, the voice of a man who has already made up his mind. I'm coming home. You cannot do this by yourself, and that is not a conversation we're having. I'm just telling you I'm coming home. I want you to understand something about me. I am not a man who cries easily. 31 years of federal service. A father who believed tears were a character flaw and raised me accordingly. I have been to funerals, layoffs, and one very bad January in 2003 that I don't talk about, and I kept it together through all of it. I cried on that phone call. Couldn't speak properly for a full minute. Just held the phone to my ear and breathed like a man surfacing from deep water. I thought, this is the son Lily always believed he was. She had always been right about him. She had always seen something in Chris that I sometimes struggled to find. And here he was, proving her right at the exact moment it mattered most. I was so relieved I didn't sleep that night, but for an entirely different reason than usual. Now let me stop right here. because this is where I need you to pay attention. Everything I'm about to describe. Every helpful gesture, every warm moment, every time Chris showed up and made my life easier. I want you to hold it in your mind alongside one fact that I didn't learn until much later. The first withdrawal from my retirement account happened 4 days after Lily's diagnosis. 4 days. He wasn't coming home because his parents needed him. He was coming home because he saw an opportunity wearing the face of a crisis. But I didn't know that yet. So let me tell you what I did see. Because what I saw was convincing enough to fool a 77-year-old man who had spent 3 decades working for the federal government and thought he knew something about reading people. Chris got an apartment over in North Davidson, for those who know Charlotte. Close enough to Elmwood Court to be present, far enough to look like a man with his own life. He was at our house 4, sometimes 5 times a week. He came to Lily's appointments at Atrium Health, shook hands with her care team, remembered every name, asked the right questions. Dr. Ellison told me once it was really something to see a son so engaged. I stood there nodding, proud as I have ever been of that boy. He handled the bills, the insurance calls, the grocery runs to the Harris Teeter on Park Road, the pharmacy pickups at the CVS on Queens Road. He handled everything that was quietly drowning me, and he made it look effortless, and I thanked God for him every single day. Here is what I did not know. He was also paying very close attention to every single number he touched. Month 3. Lily had 3 bad days back to back. Confused, frightened, reaching for people who weren't in the room, unable to remember what season it was. I hadn't slept properly in 10 days. I forgot to pay the electricity bill for the first time in my adult life, 40 years. Not once. Chris came over on a Wednesday evening and sat across from me at the kitchen table on Elmwood Court. He had a folder. He set it down between us, like a man who had thought carefully about this moment. "Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to really hear me." He had this way of talking, measured, patient. Like every sentence had been rehearsed just enough that it didn't sound rehearsed. Like a man who had read the instruction manual on your specific fears and was now handing them back to you wrapped in a solution. You're 77 years old. Mom is 64. If something happens to you tomorrow, and I'm not trying to frighten you, I'm trying to protect both of you. What happens to Mom? Everything is in your name. Your pension is in your name. If you go first, everything freezes while lawyers sort it out and Mom is sitting in this house with nothing she can actually access during the worst moment of her life. I sat with that. Every single word landed exactly where I was most afraid, like the man had been inside my head at 3 a.m. reading my private thoughts off the wall. "These are power of attorney documents," he said, opening the folder slowly. No rush, giving me time to look. "It just means I can manage the financial side completely. Bills, account access, pension paperwork, while you focus entirely on Mom. You're already carrying too much, Dad. Let me be the one who carries this part." I looked at those documents. My eyes were heavy. My hands were tired. I was running on fumes and love, and the particular exhaustion that only caregivers understand. The kind that isn't just in your body, the kind that gets into your bones, into your decision-making, into the part of your brain that is supposed to slow down and read things carefully before you sign them. I signed. Chris had everything notarized the following morning at a UPS store on Central Avenue. I know because he told me. Casually. Like it was nothing. And I, God help me, slept better that night than I had in 4 months. I thought I had finally handed something heavy to someone strong enough to carry it. I had handed him the keys to everything I had ever saved. Fast forward through 26 months of 5 a.m. medications and Atrium Health appointments, and good days and bad days. Lily laughing at something that happened in 1988 like it was yesterday morning, then not recognizing the kitchen 20 minutes later. 26 months of holding yourself together because she needs you to be held together. 26 months of calculating, in the dark, in the quiet, after she's finally asleep, how long the savings will last, whether it'll be enough, whether you'll be enough. Sunday dinner. Jenna's house in Ballantyne. My daughter, my younger child, the one who inherited her mother's eyes and her father's stubbornness in equal measure. Her husband Trevor, quiet man, works in bank compliance at a regional bank uptown. The kind of man you overlook at a party and absolutely desperately need in a crisis. Jollof rice. Fried chicken. The grandkids loud in the hallway the way grandkids are supposed to be on a Sunday evening. Lily was dressed in the blue dress I love on her, and having a decent day, warm, present, laughing genuinely at something Chris said across the table. Chris. Loud. Generous. Refilling glasses without being asked. Telling a story about a fishing trip down toward Lake Norman with the easy confidence of a man who has absolutely nothing on his conscience. And then Trevor's hand found mine under the table. He pressed his phone into my palm without looking at me. 8 words on the screen. Dad, check your retirement account right now. Then 4 more words beneath it. Then fake chest pains. Now. I looked up at Trevor. His jaw was tight. His eyes were completely still. The eyes of a man who has been waiting a long time to open a door and has finally decided the moment is right. One slow nod, the kind that means, trust me, don't ask questions, just trust me. I opened my banking app under the table. I had not looked at this account in months. Chris handled the finances. That was the arrangement. That was what I had agreed to. The number on the screen was $12,847. I stared at it. There had been $340,000 in that account. Every dollar of it saved across 31 years of federal service. Every dollar of it set aside for one purpose and one purpose only. Lily. $12,847. Chris was laughing at his own punchline across the table. Lily was smiling along, bless her beautiful heart, even though she had lost the thread of his story 3 sentences ago. The grandkids were running. The house smelled like Sunday. I put my hand flat against my chest. I don't feel right, I said quietly. I think I need some air. Jenna was on her feet before I finished the sentence. Concern so convincing that even Chris looked momentarily worried. She's her mother's daughter. She can perform calm the way other people breathe. Trevor helped me to the car. And Chris, my son, my blood, the man I cried with gratitude over on a phone call 26 months ago, stood in the doorway of his sister's house in Ballantyne and waved at me with his father's own face. Feel better, Dad. I'll check on you tomorrow. I sat in that car, and the first thought I had was not about myself. It was not about the money. It was about Lily. That $340,000 was her safety net. The memory care facility on Carmel Road that I had bookmarked on my phone and visited twice without telling anyone, walking the halls quietly, speaking to the staff, making sure it was good enough for her. The protection I had spent 40 years constructing around the woman I was terrified of leaving behind. Gone, and the man who took it was standing in a warm doorway in Ballantyne, North Carolina, waving goodbye like he hadn't taken a single thing. The truth doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in pieces, and each piece breaks something different in you. I want you to picture something. A 77-year-old man sitting in the passenger seat of a silver Honda Accord on a quiet Sunday evening in Ballantyne, North Carolina. Engine running. Streetlights just beginning to flicker on. The sound of his grandchildren still faintly audible through the walls of his daughter's house behind him. That man is staring at $12,847 on a phone screen. And that man is very, very still. Not because he is calm. I want to be absolutely clear about that. I was not calm. I was the opposite of calm. I was the kind of still that happens when your brain receives information so catastrophic that it simply refuses to move forward until it has processed what it is looking at. Like a computer that has been handed a file it was never built to open. $12,847. 31 years of federal service. Years of packed lunches and pre-owned cars, and telling my kids no to things I probably could have said yes to, because every dollar that wasn't spent was a dollar that went into that account. For Lily. Always for Lily. Trevor pulled out of the driveway without a word. He drove us uptown, not to a hospital, not to a police station, to his office building on South Tryon Street. 7th floor. The building was empty on a Sunday evening, and our footsteps echoed in the lobby like we were walking through a church. Which in a way I suppose we were. He was about to show me something sacred and devastating, and I wasn't going to be the same man on the other side of it. If you've been listening for a while and want stories like this to keep coming, it really helps if you hit that like button and subscribe. Thank you for real. Trevor closed the door. He sat down. He looked at me the way a doctor looks at you right before he tells you something you cannot unhear. Anthony, he said. And he never called me Anthony. It was always Dad. I need you to understand that everything I'm about to show you has been verified. 3 times. I didn't come to you with a suspicion. I came to you with a case. How long have you known? I asked. 4 months. 4 months. I let that sit for a second. Didn't get angry about it. Not yet. Because the look on Trevor's face told me that those 4 months had not been comfortable ones for him either. Why did you wait? He folded his hands on the desk, because Jenna needed to be completely sure before we destroyed her brother in front of her father, and because I needed every single door closed before you knew one was open. I nodded, slow, understood completely. Then he opened the folder. He started with the withdrawals, 16 months of them, always between $3,000 and $5,000, never above $9,000, spread across irregular intervals, never the same week twice, never the same amount twice, sloppy enough to spend freely, careful enough to avoid automatic federal reporting triggers. This technique has a name, Trevor said, sliding the first document across the desk. It's called structuring, and it is a federal crime entirely separate from the fraud itself. I looked at the withdrawal receipts laid out in a timeline across his desk. 16 months of them. Neat. Documented. Damning. My son had been stealing from me with the careful, patient discipline of a professional. The same discipline I had tried to teach him his entire life. He had finally applied it to something, just not to anything good. Then the pension. Chris had used my power of attorney, the document I signed at that kitchen table on Elmwood Court, on the night I was too exhausted to read carefully, to contact my pension administrator directly. He presented the legal documentation. Everything looked legitimate because it was legitimate paperwork. He requested that my monthly pension distributions be redirected to a secondary account he controlled. The administrator processed it without question. Why would they question it? The paperwork was perfect. My son had made sure of that. I did not respond to it immediately. I just looked at the wall behind Trevor's head and did the math and felt something move through me that I don't have a clean word for. Not anger, not grief, something older and colder than both of those things. Then the statements. Chris had quietly changed the correspondence address on my retirement account to a P.O. box he had opened privately on Central Avenue. I had stopped receiving paper statements, and because Chris handled the finances, because that was our arrangement, because I trusted him completely, I had never noticed they stopped coming. I had been flying blind for over a year, and my son had been the one who turned off the lights. Then Lily's account. Trevor slid a single page across the desk, and I knew from his face before I looked at it that this one was going to be the worst one. Lily had maintained a small private savings account for decades, her own quiet money, her own small sense of personal security in a marriage where I handled most of the finances. She never talked about it much. It was just hers, something she had built slowly and carefully across 40 years, the way women of her generation sometimes kept something quietly for themselves. Gone. Liquidated completely using her power of attorney. On her bad days, she didn't remember it existed. On her good days, she didn't think to check. Chris had picked his moment with surgical precision. I put both hands flat on Trevor's desk and looked at them for a moment. Just my hands. Old hands. Hands that had worked for 31 years and signed documents on a tired Wednesday night and apparently, had not done enough. There's one more, Trevor said. I looked up. He slid the final document across last, deliberately, the way you save the heaviest thing for when someone has had a moment to brace. It was a beneficiary change form. My signature was on it. I recognized the morning it had been signed. Month 9, a rushed Tuesday. Lily had been up most of the night and I was running on nothing, trying to get her ready for an appointment at Atrium Health. Chris had arrived with coffee and a stack of papers and said, "Dad, just sign these. Routine account maintenance. I've handled everything." I had signed without reading. Among those papers was a form removing Jenna and the grandchildren entirely from my retirement account beneficiaries, replacing them with Chris, my own hand, my own signature, removing my daughter and my grandchildren from everything I had spent my life building. I signed it myself. I just didn't know what I was signing. Trevor wasn't finished. "There's something else you need to know," he said. And this is the part that made me move when I did. For the past several months, Chris had been making quiet, careful observations to extended family members, at cookouts, on phone calls, in the parking lot after church. Things like, "Dad's really struggling. I worry about him constantly." And, "He's not managing as well as he thinks he is, and I've had to step in more than anyone outside the family realizes." An elder law attorney, Trevor, had privately consulted recognized the pattern immediately. Chris was laying groundwork for a conservatorship petition. If he could have me declared financially incompetent through a court proceeding, and he had been quietly, patiently building that social record for months, he would become my legal conservator. Everything he was doing illegally would have become court-sanctioned. Everything I still owned would have transferred to his legal control. He wasn't just stealing from me. He was building a legal cage around me. One quiet comment at a time. I sat in that chair on the 7th floor of a building on South Tryon Street, and I looked at Trevor Mitchell, my daughter's husband, the quiet man nobody pays attention to at parties, the man I had eaten Sunday dinner across from for 11 years, and I felt something shift permanently inside my chest. "How did you find it?" I asked. "Routine compliance review," he said. The structured withdrawals flagged a pattern report. I pulled the file. I saw your name. "And then?" "I closed my office door," he said, "and I didn't say a word to anyone until I was certain." My phone rang. "Jenna." Trevor answered and put it on speaker. Her voice was completely controlled, the voice of a woman who has been holding herself together through sheer force of will for several hours and is succeeding, but only barely. She told us Lily was fine. The grandkids were settled. Chris was still there, asking questions about my health, hovering with concern, performing devotion for an audience of one. Then she paused. "Dad," she said quietly, "Mom just told Chris he's a good boy." She patted his hand. She said he always was. Nobody spoke for a moment. The three of us just sat with that sentence. "I told her he just stepped out for some air," Jenna continued. I kept my voice completely normal. Then the line went quiet and I could hear her breathing through her nose, hard and measured, the way she does when she is refusing to cry in front of people who need her to be steady. I thought about what that moment had cost my daughter. Jenna had spent her entire life defending Chris. To me, to her mother, to relatives who whispered at Thanksgiving, to her own doubts at 2 a.m. when she lay awake wondering. She had covered for him, explained him, loved him past every reason not to, because that is what she believed family meant. And he had used that love as cover, while he robbed their father of the one thing he was saving for their mother. Then Trevor said something to me, quietly, almost to himself. "What do you want to do, Anthony?" And here is the thing about being 77 years old and sitting in an empty office building on a Sunday night with $12,847 left to your name and the full weight of what just happened pressing down on every bone in your body. You have two choices. You can be loud about it. You can call your son right now and say every true and terrible thing that is currently sitting in your chest looking for a way out. You can be the fire, or you can be something quieter, something colder, something that actually helps her. I thought about Lily on Carmel Road, the memory care facility, the staff I had spoken to. I thought about what the next chapter of her life was supposed to look like, and what it would look like if I let anger make my next decision for me. I looked at Trevor. "I want every door closed before he knows one is open," I said. "Not for me, for her. I want her protected first. Everything else comes after that." Trevor nodded once. He already had a plan. Revenge is loud. Justice is quiet. I chose the one that actually helped her. There is something nobody tells you about justice. It doesn't feel the way you think it will. You spend your whole life watching movies where the good guy gets his moment, the dramatic confrontation, the speech, the satisfaction of watching the villain finally understand what they've done. You think that when your moment comes, it's going to feel like winning, like exhaling after holding your breath for a very long time. What nobody tells you is that when the moment finally arrives, when it's real, when it's your family, when the villain is your own blood, it doesn't feel like winning at all. It feels like amputation. Necessary, correct, and permanent. I drove home to Elmwood Court that Sunday night, and I sat in my driveway for the second time in 26 months. First time I sat there, I was trying to figure out how to protect Lily from a diagnosis. This time I was trying to figure out how to protect Lily from her own son. The next morning, I was on the phone with an elder law attorney, a woman named Beverly Holt whose office was over on Providence Road, 12 minutes from my house. Trevor had already called ahead. She was expecting me. I walked in at 9 a.m. with every document Trevor had given me the night before, and she went through them the way surgeons go through a body, methodically, without flinching, seeing exactly what needed to come out. By noon that same day, the power of attorney documents Chris held over both me and Lily had been formally revoked. Every single one. Filed, processed, and effective immediately. Chris lost all legal access to both accounts before he sat down to eat his Monday lunch. He had no idea. Beverly then initiated emergency beneficiary correction proceedings with my retirement account administrator, reversing the form I had unknowingly signed on that rushed Tuesday morning, the one that removed Jenna and the grandchildren from everything. My daughter and my grandchildren were restored. Chris was removed. He still had no idea. Day 2. Trevor's compliance department at the bank opened a formal internal investigation. The evidence trail Trevor had spent 4 months building was handed to the fraud team in a package so clean and complete that the senior investigator, a man named Detective Ray Caldwell from the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Financial Crimes Unit, told Trevor it was the most organized case file he had received from a private citizen in 11 years. Trevor being Trevor, he simply nodded and said thank you. Day 3. Chris came to the house on Elmwood Court. He brought food, sat with Lily while she watched her program, straightened the living room without being asked, poured me a glass of sweet tea, and asked how I was feeling after the scare at Sunday dinner. Much better, I told him. Just tired. You know how it is. You need to take care of yourself, Dad, he said. I worry about you. I looked at my son sitting across from me in my living room. I thought about $12,847. I thought about Lily's private savings account, the one she had quietly built across 40 years. Gone completely. I thought about the conservatorship groundwork he had been laying in the minds of family members for months. The cage he was building around me, one quiet comment at a time. I picked up my glass of sweet tea and I said, "You're right, son. I'm going to start paying very close attention to everything going forward." He nodded, looked satisfied he had absolutely no idea what was already in motion around him. Day 4. My daughter Jenna went to the house on Elmwood Court on a Tuesday morning while Chris thought she was at work. She moved through her childhood home with her spare key and a list of documents Beverly Holt needed. Original paperwork, files from the back office, things Chris didn't know she could access, because he had never considered that Jenna might stop defending him long enough to move against him. She told me later that she didn't allow herself to feel anything while she was inside the house. She was completely focused, and she felt nothing until she was back in her car with the documents on the passenger seat. Then she sat there for 10 minutes before she could drive. I didn't ask her what the 10 minutes felt like. I already knew. Day 6. Beverly Holt initiated emergency Medicaid planning proceedings, identifying every protective measure still available to us given the documented fraud circumstances. She found pathways I didn't know existed, legal structures that could still shield Lily's care options even with the account depleted the way it had been. The memory care facility on Carmel Road, the one I had visited twice in secret, the one I had bookmarked on my phone and prayed over in the dark, was still reachable. Lily was going to be okay. For the first time in 9 days, I exhaled all the way. Day 7. Chris came back. He stayed longer this time, asked careful questions about my health, wondered aloud whether I had thought about updating my advance directive paperwork. Just being responsible, Dad. Just thinking ahead. I looked at my son for a long, quiet moment. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "You're absolutely right, Chris," I said. "I should be thinking ahead." He smiled. He drove home. Every door around him was already closed. He just hadn't tried any of them yet. Day 9. Sunday. I called Chris in the morning. "Son, I'm feeling much better. Come to Sunday dinner at the house this weekend. Bring something nice. We have a lot to be grateful for." He arrived at Elmwood Court at 6 o'clock with an expensive bottle of wine and his widest smile. The table was set carefully. Lily was in the blue dress, the one I have always loved on her. She was having a good day. Present, warm, occasionally funny in the way that used to make me fall in love with her all over again in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday. She told a story from 35 years ago that made Jenna laugh despite everything she was carrying inside her chest. Jenna, sitting at that table with her mother's laugh in her ears and 4 months of her brother's betrayal in her bones, holding it all together with nothing but love and sheer will. Trevor sat beside her, quiet, steady, unremarkable to anyone who didn't know what he had done, which was everyone at that table except me. Chris sat at the head of the table and was everything he had always performed being: charming, generous, devoted, refilling glasses, laughing at his own jokes, the golden sun at Sunday dinner like none of the last 16 months had ever happened. The food was good, the company was almost convincing, and then midway through the first course, there was a knock at the front door. I stood up. I walked to the door on Elmwood Court, my house, my floors, my 40 years, and I opened it. 2 financial crimes detectives, plain clothes, paperwork in hand, professional, calm, and completely unhurried. Detective Ray Caldwell and his partner. I had spoken to them 3 days earlier. They knew exactly where they were going and exactly who they were there for. I heard Chris stop talking mid-sentence. I stepped aside. The detectives walked in. I watched my son's face in the moment he understood what was happening. And I want to tell you something, because this part matters. There was no guilt on his face first. Even now, even in this moment, his first instinct was not remorse. His eyes moved fast across the room, to me, to Trevor, to Jenna, to the door looking for the exit that did not exist. There was no exit. Every door was closed. Jenna stood up slowly. She had been thinking about what she wanted to say for 9 days. She had rehearsed it, revised it, stripped it down. And when the moment finally arrived, she found it was simpler than anything she had prepared. She did not raise her voice. She did not cry. "I want you to look at Mom before you leave this house, Chris." The room went quiet. Chris looked at Lily. Lily was looking back at her son with complete and total warmth. She did not fully understand what was happening around her. She thought perhaps Chris was leaving early after a lovely dinner, the way he sometimes did. And she didn't want him to go yet. She lifted her hand. She waved at him gently. "Good night, sweetheart," she said softly. "You're such a good boy. You always have been." Jenna let that sit in the room. Let it breathe. Let every person at that table feel the full weight of what Lily's disease had just done. Protected her son from ever having to watch her face change. Chris would never see his mother understand what he had done. Her dementia would carry him safely through the rest of her life with his name clean and warm in her memory. He would never have to earn that. Then Jenna spoke. Quietly. Directly. Finally. "She will probably always believe that, Chris. Her mind will protect you from ever seeing her face change. You will never have to watch her understand what you did to this family." She didn't pause. She didn't waver. "But I understand it. Dad understands it. And I need you to know, every withdrawal you made while he was awake at 5 a.m. giving her medication, every document you had him sign while he was half blind with exhaustion trying to protect her, every time you sat at this table and let him thank God for you, I know all of it. And I will spend every day of the rest of my life making sure both of them are okay. Not because I have to, because that is what loving someone actually looks like." Chris was walked out of the front door of the house on Elmwood Court, and Lily, my beautiful, warm, still present Lily, watched him go and waved cheerfully from her chair at the dinner table, believing completely and peacefully that her son was simply leaving after a lovely family dinner, the way he always did. Chris pleaded guilty. The paper trail Trevor had built was too clean and too complete for any attorney to argue against. Elder financial abuse, criminal fraud, federal structuring charges. Restitution was ordered. It comes back slowly, in pieces, the way he took it. Some of it does not come back at all. I have made my peace with that, or I am making it. Some days that's the best you can do. But Lily's care is protected. Beverly Holt and the emergency Medicaid planning she put in motion made sure of that. The memory care facility on Carmel Road, the one I visited in secret and prayed over in the dark, is now reachable. Lily will be okay. Not perfect. Not the life we planned. But okay. And okay, right now, is everything. I still think about something I have never fully understood until right now. Chris was my blood, but Trevor chose me. And when everything that should have held is broken, when the people who were supposed to love you have shown you exactly what they are, being chosen by someone who had absolutely no obligation to stay is the thing that puts you back together. Not all the way, but enough. If you enjoyed this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories. And as always, thank you for being a part of Dad's Raw Revenge. I will see you on the next one.